2,000 years ago, before sunrise even touched the Roman horizon, a legionary's day had already begun in filth, sweat, and discipline. Imagine waking up on a freezing morning inside a cramped leather tent shared with 7 other men. Your armor still smells of yesterday's sweat. Your feet ache from endless marching. And before you even eat breakfast, you walk toward a cold stone latrine where 20 soldiers sit shoulder to shoulder with absolutely no privacy. For a Roman soldier, this wasn't misery. This was normal life. And honestly, if any modern person were dropped into a Roman military camp, they probably wouldn't survive even a single day without feeling disgusted. Because Roman hygiene was both shockingly advanced and unbelievably horrifying at the same time. The Romans built aqueducts, public baths, drainage systems, and military hospitals centuries ahead of much of the world. Yet those same soldiers cleaned themselves with shared sponges, washed clothes in fermented urine, and lived surrounded by parasites they couldn't even understand existed. Today we're diving deep into the brutal reality of Roman soldier hygiene, and why the daily routine of Rome's most feared warriors would completely horrify the modern world. And before we march into the filth of ancient Rome, make sure to subscribe to the channel and join us for more incredible stories from the ancient world. If there's one object that perfectly captures the terrifying difference between Roman hygiene and modern hygiene, it's something called the xylospongium, a simple wooden stick with a sea sponge attached to the end. And yes, it was Roman toilet paper. But here's the truly disturbing part. The sponge wasn't personal. It was shared, an entire military barracks. Sometimes hundreds of men used the exact same sponge throughout the day. After each use, it would simply be rinsed in vinegar or salt water before being passed to the next soldier. To the Romans, this seemed perfectly reasonable. Vinegar was believed to purify the sponge and kill harmful substances. In fairness, vinegar does have mild antibacterial properties. But inside crowded military camps filled with exhausted soldiers, overflowing latrines, mud, blood, and disease, the reality was far less sanitary than the Romans imagined. Archaeologists excavating Roman forts in Britain, especially at Vindolanda near Hadrian's Wall, uncovered evidence showing these sponge sticks were commonly used throughout military life. And the latrines themselves reveal something equally shocking. Roman soldiers didn't use private bathrooms. They sat together. Rows of stone toilets lined military latrines with no walls, no dividers, and no privacy whatsoever. Men talked, joked, argued, and discussed military business while relieving themselves side by side. To the Romans, hygiene was collective, not personal. Privacy simply wasn't part of their world. And yet, strangely enough, Roman sanitation was still incredibly sophisticated for its time. Beneath those stone benches, water constantly flowed through underground channels, carrying waste away from the camp. Massive aqueduct systems supplied fresh water to cities and forts across the empire. Ancient Rome transported hundreds of millions of gallons of water every single day, an engineering achievement unmatched in Europe for over 1,000 years after the empire collapsed. But hidden beneath this technological marvel was a deadly problem the Romans could never see: parasites. Modern archaeological studies examining fossilized Roman waste discovered eggs from dangerous intestinal worms across Roman military sites in Britain and Europe. Despite all their baths and water systems, Roman soldiers suffered terribly from parasites, dysentery, lice, fleas, and chronic infections. In some campaigns, disease killed more soldiers than enemy swords. The Romans understood that dirty environments caused sickness, but without microscopes or germ theory, they blamed bad air instead of bacteria. So even their greatest sanitation systems sometimes spread disease rather than preventing it. But nowhere is this contradiction more obvious than in the Roman baths. To modern eyes, Roman bathhouses almost sound luxurious. The baths of Caracalla in Rome could hold over 1,600 people at once. These giant complexes contained heated pools, steam rooms, exercise courts, libraries, massage areas, and gardens. For exhausted legionaries returning from brutal campaigns, the baths were one of the few comforts in military life. A Roman bath followed a ritual. First came the changing room. then the warm room, then the scorching hot coldarium filled with steam and heated pools. Finally, soldiers plunged into freezing cold water to close their pores and awaken the body. Oddly enough, some modern wellness trends still imitate this exact sequence today. But Roman baths had one terrifying flaw. The water was not cleaned properly. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, of people entered the same pools daily while the water was only changed periodically. No chlorine, no filters, no modern disinfection. Warm communal pools became perfect breeding grounds for bacteria, fungi, and disease. Roman doctors even warned people with open wounds to avoid bathhouses whenever possible. Yet soldiers continued using them because cleanliness wasn't optional in Roman military culture. It was discipline. It was morale. It was civilization itself. And Roman soldiers took bodily grooming far more seriously than most people realize. Body hair removal was common among legionaries because hair attracted lice and fleas inside crowded camps. Soldiers used metal tweezers to painfully pluck hairs one by one. Others used sticky resin pastes ripped directly from the skin like ancient wax treatments. Some of these mixtures even contained arsenic compounds, toxic chemicals the Romans unknowingly rubbed onto their bodies regularly. Meanwhile, military barbers traveled with the legions, shaving soldiers and trimming hair to maintain a disciplined appearance. At certain periods in Roman history, beards were even discouraged because Romans associated them with barbarians. Looking clean meant looking Roman, and looking Roman meant looking superior. But perhaps nothing from Roman hygiene sounds stranger to modern ears than their obsession with urine. Yes, urine. The Romans collected it publicly, taxed it, sold it, and used it everywhere. Why? Because fermented urine produces ammonia, an effective cleaning chemical. Roman laundries washed clothes by stomping them barefoot in giant vats of aged urine. Soldiers cleaned armor, removed rust, and scrubbed fabrics using the same method. Even wounds were sometimes washed with urine in emergencies. To modern audiences, this sounds horrifying. But chemically speaking, the Romans had accidentally discovered something useful centuries before modern science explained why it worked. Emperor Vespasian even created a tax on urine collection because the trade became so profitable. When critics complained, he famously responded with the phrase, "Money does not stink." Meanwhile, the average Roman soldier smelled absolutely terrible. The legionary diet relied heavily on garlic, onions, vinegar drinks, grains, and sweat-soaked marching. Roman writers openly joked about the overwhelming odor of soldiers returning from campaigns. During long marches, bathing became impossible for weeks at a time. Underneath heavy armor, padded linen garments absorbed sweat continuously, creating ideal conditions for fungus and skin infections. The combination of heat, mud, blood, and constant marching turned Roman military camps into breeding grounds for odor and disease. And despite all the discipline of the Roman army, parasites remained everywhere. Lice combs discovered at Roman forts show soldiers constantly battled infestations. Fleas spread between men, dogs, rats, and food supplies. Dysentery tore through military camps with terrifying speed. Entire units could collapse from contaminated water alone. Roman military doctors carried advanced surgical tools and operated surprisingly organized field hospitals. But without knowledge of bacteria, even successful surgeries often ended in deadly infection. The Romans had the skill to save lives, but not the science. Before battle, however, Roman hygiene became something even deeper. It became sacred. Soldiers polished armor, cleaned weapons, trimmed hair, and purified themselves before combat rituals. Roman commanders believed discipline and cleanliness honored the gods. Priests performed sacred ceremonies before battles in specially purified clothing. Elite soldiers and standard bearers were expected to appear immaculate because appearance inspired confidence on the battlefield. But once combat began, all civilization disappeared. Roman warfare was chaos. Mud, blood, sweat, screams, broken bodies, and battlefield surgeons worked desperately in horrifying conditions using heated irons, saws, knives, and primitive painkillers. Many soldiers survived the battle, only to die later from infection. The truth about Roman hygiene is both impressive and terrifying. The Romans built some of the greatest sanitation systems of the ancient world. They understood the importance of cleanliness, public health, and organized infrastructure far better than most civilizations around them. But they still lived in a microscopic nightmare they could not see: shared sponges, parasites, contaminated water, fleas, disease, urine cleaning, communal bathing, and constant infection. Roman soldiers existed in a world balanced between engineering brilliance and biological horror. And maybe that's what makes their story so fascinating. Because despite everything, they still built one of the greatest empires in human history. If this video changed the way you see ancient Rome, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us in the comments which Roman hygiene habit disturbed you the most. And trust me, the deeper you explore the Roman world, the stranger it becomes.